You believed she would complete you, that her presence would soften the brutality of the world, that her love would mend the fractures left by life's violence. You believed because you were taught to believe. Every poem, every fable, every romantic lie repeated since your youth sang the same melody. That woman is salvation, that she is softer, purer, more divine. But what if I told you that this belief is not only false, but that it is the very origin of your suffering? You do not suffer because women betray you. You suffer because you projected transcendence onto something that was never anything but flesh, instinct, and appearance. You mistook biology for eternity, chemistry for meaning, and reproduction for revelation. And now you suffer, not from the nature of woman, but from your refusal to see her as she is. Let us speak clearly, without the intoxication of sentiment or the flattery of idealism. Woman is not your completion. She is not the missing piece of your soul. She is, in the most unflinching metaphysical sense, the continuation of the will to live in its most cunning form. The will, blind and ceaseless, has no interest in your peace. It only wants to replicate itself. And for that it has fashioned woman to seduce you, not by force but by illusion. Her beauty is not accidental, it is a bait. Her softness, her allure, her scent, her smile, each a thread in the snare. And man, in his tragic naivety, sees not the trap, but the promise. He kneels before her as if she were the divine, and in doing so he becomes the slave of his own longing. She does not enslave him, his delusion does. The sentimentalist will rage at this truth. He will call it bitterness, misogyny, cynicism. But I speak not from hatred, I speak from clarity, from the sharp edge of observation unclouded by desire. If you dare to observe woman not as a fantasy but as a phenomenon, you will see what lies beneath the mask. She is nature's tool, delicate, yes, but directed by the same blind will that animates all striving. Her purpose, metaphysically speaking, is not to fulfill you, but to ensure that you continue, that you mate, that you reproduce, that you perpetuate the cycle of suffering you were born into. She is not your enemy, but she is not your savior either. She is the world in its most seductive form, and to worship her is to kneel before illusion. The tragedy is not in woman herself. She is not to blame for the spell she casts. The tragedy is that man, possessing intellect and depth, forfeits them willingly for the promise of warmth. He abdicates his reason, silences his metaphysical insight, and dissolves into yearning. And what does he find? Temporary ecstasy, followed by the same void that once drove him into her arms. It is not her fault that you sought eternity in her embrace. It is yours. You asked from her what only renunciation can offer. You begged her to save you from the will, and instead she led you deeper into it. Because that is her function. Not to liberate, but to continue. And so we begin here, at the fracture between what man believes and what he endures, between the heavenly image and the worldly consequence. If you have suffered because of woman, understand this. She did not deceive you. You deceived yourself. And now, if you are ready, I will show you not how to hate her, but how to see her. To strip away the projection, to observe the will at work behind the mask, to stop asking her for what she cannot give, and in doing so, to begin freeing yourself from the torment of illusion. Woman in her essence is not evil, nor is she angelic. She is not divine nor demonic. She is necessity shaped by nature, made pleasing by the will. Her body, her voice, her rhythm of emotion, none of this is accidental. All of it has been carved by the blind urgency of reproduction. The will to live, that insatiable force behind all existence, has no language, no morality, no vision. It only wants to persist, and for this purpose it uses woman. She is not chosen by the will for her virtue, but for her effectiveness. Her beauty is the mask of biological utility. Her allure is the mechanism by which the will propagates itself through your flesh, your desire, your illusions. Look closely at how she moves through the world. Her instincts are not shaped by reason, but by nature's deep cunning. She may speak of love, of connection, of soulmates, but these are only phrases placed over impulses far more ancient and far more ruthless. The tenderness she offers is not for your soul, but for the offspring she may one day carry. Her loyalty is not bound to truth, but to survival. Her behavior is not treachery, it is strategy. And the man who fails to see this suffers. He attributes malice to what is merely adaptation. He accuses her of betrayal when all she has done is follow the invisible compass of life's repetition. This is not a condemnation of woman. It is a confrontation with the will. For woman is not the origin of this suffering. She is the agent through which it operates. Nature equips her to seduce, to select, to replicate. The pain you feel when she leaves you, when she no longer desires you, when her gaze shifts to another. This is not because she has failed you. It is because she has fulfilled her function. The will does not care for your story. It does not care for your dreams. It moves through her, reshaping her affections and attachments as needed to continue its endless unfolding. Even her tenderness, even her affection are conditional. She nurtures not because she is good, but because the child ensures the future of the species. Her emotions are not false, but they are not eternal. They last as long as nature requires, no longer. She is a momentary fire designed to spark continuity. And when that purpose fades, so too does the fire. The man who clings to her warmth in search of permanence finds only ash. Because permanence is not her domain, perpetuation is. Romantic love, therefore, is not a gift from the divine, but a trap set by the will. It binds man with illusion so that he may surrender his solitude, his clarity, his strength. For what? A brief fusion followed by confusion, a moment of ecstatic blindness followed by the same emptiness he thought he had escaped. And yet he returns to it, again and again, because the will does not rely on reason, it relies on compulsion. Woman is the mask, but behind the mask stands the ancient puppeteer. If you feel this as cruelty, let that feeling burn. Let it expose the softness in you that still wishes for comfort over clarity. Because until you see woman as she is, not as what you want her to be, you will remain a slave, not to her, but to your own projection. She is not your liberator. She is the curve of the cage, elegant and inviting. And the bars that bind you are your own hopes. What you must now understand is that the will is not merely in woman, it is in you. Your desire for her, your longing for union, your ache for completion. These are not signs of love, they are symptoms of enslavement. The will acts in both sexes, but it deceives man through admiration and woman through instinct. You fall in love not with her, but with the possibility that your pain might end. And this is the cruelest illusion of all, that the source of suffering might become its cure. Man's greatest error is not his desire, it is what he makes of that desire. He does not merely long for woman, he elevates her. He wraps her in the language of holiness, swears she is the path to salvation, and kneels before her with a reverence that borders on the religious. But this elevation is not love, it is illusion in its most intoxicating form. Man does not worship woman because she is divine, he worships her because he is desperate. Desperate to believe that somewhere in this chaotic, brutal, blind world there exists something pure. Something that will love him unconditionally, complete him entirely, and pull him from the abyss. In his delusion he casts woman in this role, and thus she becomes the mirror of his longing, not a person but a projection. This idealization is not noble, it is tragic. For by projecting divinity onto woman, man forgets what she is, an instrument of the will, bound by instinct, driven by biological necessity. He ascribes to her spiritual depth where there is only emotional fluctuation. He believes she seeks transcendence when she seeks security. He calls her mysterious when in truth he simply cannot accept that her motives are not his own. This is why so many men are shattered not by rejection but by the collapse of their fantasy. They are not mourning the loss of the woman. They are mourning the death of what they believed she represented. Society, poetry, and religion have long conspired in this deception. Through verse and myth, woman is painted as the soul's companion, the reward of the virtuous, the muse of the artist, the balm for all masculine wounds. She becomes an angel, a goddess, a sacred mystery. But remove the veil and you will find not eternity but impermanence, not divine purpose but survival instinct. She was never the answer to your metaphysical hunger. She was the will's answer to the problem of reproduction. All else was costume. The consequences of this error are not limited to heartbreak. They stretch deeper. A man who idealizes woman forfeits his own clarity. He sacrifices discernment for enchantment. He becomes weak, not through malice, but through faith. Faith that she will save him, that she will complete what life has fractured. And yet every time she fails to meet this fantasy, as she must, he does not blame the fantasy. He blames her. He says she changed or lied or became cold. But the truth is simpler. She was never what he imagined. The illusion was always his. And this illusion is not merely personal. It is civilizational. Entire cultures have risen and collapsed under the weight of female idealization. Chivalry, with its hollow rituals and self-annihilating worship of woman, reduced men to servants of an abstraction. Romanticism made madness into virtue, teaching men that to suffer for love was noble. Even modern ideologies continue this legacy, dressing ancient impulses in progressive language but never breaking from the central lie. That woman is what man needs to be whole. She is not. She is what the will uses to ensure he remains incomplete. To free oneself from this deception is not to hate woman. Hatred is still a form of bondage. No, it is to see her without the veil. To look upon her and not flinch from what she truly is. Not an angel, not a devil, but a vessel, of instinct, of reproduction, of nature's design. She feels, yes. She speaks, yes. She is capable of kindness, affection, tenderness. But these are not guarantees, and they are not metaphysical gifts. They are fleeting conditions dependent on circumstances, hormones, and the cold calculations of survival. And when they vanish, as they often do, it is not because she failed you. It is because you expected something she never promised. The man who awakens from idealization does not become bitter. He becomes free. He stops pleading for affection as if it were a sacrament. He stops constructing elaborate fictions around ordinary impulses. He sees that the beauty he once worshipped was a tool, not a truth. And in that recognition he reclaims himself from delusion, from despair, from dependence. He no longer needs her to complete him because he no longer believes he was incomplete. The hole he tried to fill was not in his heart, it was in his understanding, and once filled, the craving quiets. There comes a moment when the illusions begin to decay, not all at once, but piece by piece. What once stirred the blood now leaves you unmoved. What once haunted your nights begins to lose its shape. And in the space where yearning once ruled, something quieter emerges, clarity. Not the kind celebrated in books or sermonized from pulpits, but a cold, sobering clarity born from disillusionment. It is here, in this wasteland of broken projections, that solitude becomes not your punishment but your liberation. To withdraw from woman is not to withdraw from life. It is to withdraw from a particular kind of madness, the madness of begging the world to give you what it cannot. Solitude, once feared as exile, becomes the only environment in which truth can breathe. In the presence of the feminine, the will stirs, whispers, seduces. But in her absence, it weakens. And for the first time, you begin to see not with the eyes of the animal, but with the vision of the philosopher. You see woman not as your destination, but as your mirror. She was always reflecting back your hunger, your blindness, your hope. Withdrawal is not bitterness. It is the refusal to barter your peace for momentary warmth. It is the recognition that the chase, the conquest, the desperate yearning to be loved, these are all variations of the same disease. The will seeks movement. You seek stillness. These two desires are eternally at war. But once you stop chasing, once you sit still, the noise begins to subside. In this stillness, you do not become less human. You become more real. You strip away the intoxications, the melodrama, the sacred illusions. What remains is not hollow, it is free. And yet many fear this stillness. They confuse it with loneliness. But loneliness is not the absence of others. It is the absence of self. Most men never meet themselves because they are always chasing someone else's gaze, always trying to be desirable, to be seen, to be wanted. But the man who walks alone into solitude learns something terrifying and beautiful. He is not what he thought he was. Without her to impress, to seduce, to validate, he finds the contours of his mind more clearly. He reads, he thinks, he remembers what silence sounds like, and slowly he begins to unlearn the myth that told him he needed to be loved to exist. In this withdrawal there is dignity, not because you are superior but because you are no longer deceived. You have looked upon the mechanism and stepped away from it. You no longer dance when the will plays its music. You listen but do not move. This is not apathy, it is mastery. And in mastering yourself, you begin to see woman not with contempt, but with compassion. You see her not as the gatekeeper of your worth, but as another form of the will, bound by its compulsions just as you once were. The philosopher does not isolate himself out of hatred for the world, but out of reverence for truth. He does not run from woman because she is dangerous, but because she is powerful. Too powerful for a man who is not yet free. And once free, he no longer seeks to possess her. He sees her, appreciates her, perhaps even converses with her, but the hunger is gone. The old hunger that once dressed itself in love or passion or need, that is what he has buried, and in its place stands a silence that does not ache. If you fear this path, it is because you are still entangled, still hoping, still believing that just one more encounter, one more connection will redeem what has already been lost. But there is no redemption in repetition. There is only clarity in renunciation. And that renunciation does not make you less. It makes you whole. For when you stop asking her to complete you, you begin the difficult work of completing yourself. And that is the only union worth pursuing. Let us speak plainly now, with nothing left to hide behind. Woman is not your enemy. She is not your salvation. She is not a problem to solve, nor a mystery to unravel. She is an expression of the will, just as you are, shaped by nature, compelled by instincts, directed by forces that lie beneath all consciousness. Her behaviors, her choices, her contradictions, they are not moral failures. They are biological necessities masked in emotional language. To expect more from her is to expect the sea to hold still. It is to demand that fire not burn. You suffer not because woman failed to meet your fantasy. You suffer because you called your fantasy truth. Do not waste your life hating her. Hatred is only attachment inverted. It is the echo of hope still struggling to speak. The man who has truly seen through the illusion does not hate. He observes. He sees the game, the bait, the trap, and he smiles. Not with malice, but with understanding. She is what she is. The error was thinking she was anything else. And once that understanding settles in your bones, something extraordinary happens. You no longer chase. You no longer beg. You no longer search for yourself in her eyes. The will, though still present, loosens its grip. And in that loosening, there is peace. This peace is not exciting. It will not be written about in songs. It does not thrill or intoxicate, but it endures. It gives you back to yourself. You sit in a room alone and you are no longer restless. You walk among others and no longer seek their admiration. You see a beautiful woman and do not feel pulled, not because you are numb, but because you are awake. Awake to the machinery beneath appearance. Awake to the pattern of suffering you once called love. And in that wakefulness you are no longer prey. This is not a path for most. Most will continue to chase, to suffer, to believe. They will call their pain noble, their heartbreak sacred. They will continue to write poems about illusions and build lives on fantasies. Let them. But if you are tired, truly tired, not just of women but of the cycle itself, then walk with me. Walk away, not into bitterness but into lucidity, into silence, into the kind of freedom that cannot be purchased or praised. You will not be admired for it. You will not be rewarded, but you will be free. If this voice has reached you at the right time, if you've seen through the veil and found only stillness where longing once lived, then remain. Subscribe, not for comfort but for clarity. And in the comments, tell me, what was the one illusion about women that you had to destroy in order to finally see? Your words may become a mirror for another man's awakening, and in that, even silence speaks.